As you want to expand your business as a more local, regional player, the good news is you don't have to reinvent all your campaigns the whole time. You don't have to do everything different for every market because we're a global platform and our users have a kind of like a global approach to our platform.
Welcome to Behind the Numbers Brand Anatomy, an all-new eMarketer podcast that looks under the hood of your favorite brands, made possible by Basis Technologies. It's December 1st, and I'm your host, eMarketer Briefing Director Jeremy Goldman, and this is the show that gets inside brands and dives deep into one of their recent campaigns or discusses the ROI behind a new technology they've adopted. Today, we're talking with Harold Klaje, EVP and President of Global Advertising at Reddit. Welcome, Harold.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. It's so great to be here.
Great to have you. Here's what we have on deck for you, dear listener, today. First, a speed intro where we get to know our guest in 100 seconds or less. Then, Tell Me Something I Don't Know, where yours truly and this week's guest will bring a number, stat, or study that we find particularly fascinating and or relevant. And then we jump into this week's case study, how Reddit is growing through international expansion by being responsive to consumers and advertisers alike. All right, Harold, time for your speed intro where we get to know you and see how you think on your feet. 100 seconds on the clock. Our producer, Victoria, will be timing you. You ready?
I'm ready, Jeremy, and listeners, yes.
Your time starts now. First off, where are you from?
I'm originally from Holland, but born in Singapore and currently live in the Bay Area, US.
What is your primary goal at Reddit?
My primary goal is to continue to build out our advertising business on a global scale. We're a pretty new company in the advertising business with our ad server launching in 2018. But as a company, we're 16 years old and we have a lot of great momentum going on in our business.
Amen to that. Favorite marketing or business book of the last few years?
Ooh, I gotta say that my favorite book, it's not really a marketing book, but I still love Who Moves My Cheese. So I'm gonna call that one out here.
Fair enough. 50 seconds to go. Favorite kind of sushi roll?
Oh, it's gotta be, I'm gonna skip the sashimi roll to be very honest. And I'm gonna go for sashimi and tuna sashimi.
Well, we're going to allow you to duck the question. Fair enough.
Thank you for that.
If you were a subreddit, what would you be?
I would probably be the subreddit Funny Charts, which is one of my favorite subreddits. And it's a great subreddit that uses data to create charts to justify any kind of conclusion or statement you want to make.
20 seconds to go. You can have coffee with any two living business leaders. Who do you pick?
Oh, Elon Musk. And I guess today I would pick Jack Dorsey because he is moving on from Twitter.
And I can fit in one more. What's one thing about how you were in high school that your Reddit team would never guess is true?
That I used to have skater length blonde hair. And for the listeners, if you cannot see me, but there's not much of that blonde hair left by now.
Well, we're going to post a picture of you in high school in the show notes, so no problem there. And not bad. We got through 7 out of 8 questions, so I'll say that was a pretty successful run.
I'll give that an A- for now. Perfect. Thanks, Jeremy.
You survived. Now it's time for Tell Me Something I Don't Know. This is the segment where we each bring an interesting number, stat, or study, or finding that most folks wouldn't know about, but will be highly relevant to brand marketers, and we explain why we think it matters. Here's what I'm bringing. Okay? It was really interesting for me to see in the Deloitte 2021 holiday survey that social media use among US adults for holiday research or purchases is on the rise. It's up to 28% in 2021. Last year it was 26%, and the year beforehand it was 23%. So it really does kind of show that social commerce and or just research to figure out what you want to buy is something that is alive and well. Any thoughts?
I actually think that is a very interesting stat. It doesn't really surprise me because we kind of see that same behavior on Reddit. So I'll take the lead and straight away throw a fun and interesting stat from my end, if that's okay, Jeremy. But we see the same on Reddit. Like people who visit Reddit, they're more convinced in their purchase decision. And that is because of how Reddit works as being this community where people are sharing ideas and trusting ideas with each other. And what we've seen is there's a third-party data that we've looked at, or not we looked at, but Further Analytics, another company looked at. And based on that behavior on Reddit, people actually decide 9 times faster on Reddit what to purchase. Because they're so informed and educated about what they have researched on Reddit, they also spend on average 15% more. and because of the way how our communities work on Reddit, whereby they're not being influenced by one person, but they're being influencing by all the people in their community that they trust. There are also 12% higher NPS score. So they become like a brand advocate straight away for these brands that they purchase for the first time. So to your point, yes, I do think that social media plays a big role in commerce. And we definitely have seen that behavior on Reddit with these confident buyers that we have in these communities that research information, therefore purchase faster, purchase more, and have a high NPS score for brands.
Do you think that the average consumer is separating out in their head the idea of researching a purchase on social media versus actually transacting? Because it does seem, at least from the research that I've seen, that people are getting a lot more comfortable with actual social commerce and actually transacting on a social platform.
Ooh, actually, by the way, that's a pretty deep question, because I think that goes into a lot of different elements what's happening in society. I will say, let's just start with that the pandemic, of course, has led to online social media and purchasing online increase, right? So that's a bit what you're talking about, like because it is harder to do shopping comparison in stores, because it's harder to get to stores, you are kind of more reliant on social media and other online platforms to compare, right? I think that's one. I think two also, I can't speak on behalf of other platforms, but I do see on Reddit, like we have these 100,000 plus communities, right, on all these topics. So people can literally find people that are interested in a topic on almost any topic that is out there. So for example, like I was trying to build my own little solar panel setup, and there are many subreddits I can become a member of and participate in about solar panels. And these people are not out there to sell me anything. They're just sharing their great ideas about like how they set up their own little mini system at home, like what they did. We're debating that, we're talking about that, they give me ideas, I ask them questions. And because of that, I become pretty familiar and comfortable with some of these solar panel brands now, right? And how to set it up. And therefore, taking that action to purchase now online has become less of a barrier and not that frightening anymore, because these people are recommending me where I can buy this and how I can buy this. And they're trusted people now for me. So I think that also has really helped in that process.
Well, as you were talking, I was just really thinking about the fact that, sure, there are, let's say, Facebook groups and Twitter communities, but Reddit at its core, the people who I speak to the most often through Reddit are people who I don't know in real life, but they are subject matter experts on specific topics. And in that way, it seems that Reddit is arguably made for social commerce, because you can get very deep in specific topics and things that you want to know more about, versus on Facebook, where when I say, who knows about slow cookers, you're going to get 3 opinions, but those might not be people who are necessarily, that savvy on the subject.
Jeremy, I'm not going to disagree with that. I mean, that's what we see happening on Reddit every day. And we see this in these communities, these passionate people. They have a lot of knowledge. They're willing to share this knowledge with their community, friends and buddies right out there. And I think the one thing I'll add to it, if that's okay, is what also works really well on Reddit is because not only are these trusted people or people that have information, but we also upvote and downvote together on the system. So if someone has an idea, but people think that idea is like, might not be the best one or the most relevant one, it gets downvoted by other knowledgeable people. And if it's a good idea that everyone says like, yeah, actually that worked for me, that was very thoughtful, that was a great idea, it gets upvoted, and therefore more people see that. So I think that upvote, downvote concept that we have on Reddit is another great means of getting the most useful information in front of people as quick as possible.
And that's why I'm surprised my wife isn't on Reddit, because she downvotes my ideas all the time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to actually throw it to you for, I think, a piece of data that you had. You had a first $100 million advertising revenue quarter in Q2 2021. Is that correct?
That is indeed correct. Yeah, that was a first of hopefully many more milestones to come for us. But as said, we're a 16-year-old company, but our advertising business is still fairly new. And we've been building this out in the US as well as international in these last 2-3 years, especially, right? But since 2018. And our message is working well, always with our communities, but it's also working really well with our advertisers. So yes, we had for ourselves our milestone of breaking through the $100 million quarter in Q2. Our business momentum is strong, and I look forward to hitting more milestones together with the team and our advertisers and our users in the coming quarters and years.
Well, maybe after the break, you'll tell us when the $200 million threshold is going to be beat in a quarter, or maybe not. But we're going to take a quick word from our sponsor, Basis Technologies, and we'll be right back.
Today's podcast is made possible by Basis Technologies. Basis Technologies has created a digital advertising platform that connects people, automates processes, and unifies channels, bringing together programmatic, site direct, search, social, and CTV into one single interface. And through the power of automation, Basis enable brands, agencies, and publishers to build and operate a healthy, secure, efficient, and profitable advertising organization. Ready to take control of your advertising? Just go to basis.net today. That's www.basis.net. Basis Technologies, the future of advertising has arrived.
All right, now it's time for our Briefcase Study, where we look at a recent brand campaign or deployment and discuss what went right and some learnings for next time. So, Harold, I wanted to ask you, how has your recent international expansion contributed to business growth generally?
Yeah, for us, our international expansion is very important, right? So we have a mission at Reddit, like most companies have a mission, and our mission is really to bring community and belonging to everyone in the world. And I think it's very clear, if you want to bring community and belonging to everyone in the world, you can't only do that in the US. That's not the whole world. So for us to drive our mission, we've been expanding internationally since last year. We've opened up a couple of markets, and we started in the UK just a year before that. So we built out now teams on the sales side, on the product side, on the community side, on the engineering side, with focus on the UK, Canada, Germany, and Australia. And the good news is that it's going very well. We've seen that the message that we have in the US also resonates very strong with our international communities. We kind of knew that because these are markets where we already had a lot of Reddit users. And those Reddit users were growing still fast year over year. But it's also great to see that the message resonates really well with our advertisers also. And not only large advertisers or global advertisers, but also with more local, smaller advertisers. So that launch has been exciting for us, and it's going well so far.
So what are your top priority markets internationally, if you had to pick? I mean, every business has to pick a few markets in order to really dominate and move from there. So what would be yours? Yeah,
for us, look, the markets we chose for our top priority are markets where we just had a lot of users, we had a lot of engagement on our platform, and we could see that these communities were passionate and were looking at brands and other players in the market that can help them move their interest and passion into action. Those key markets for us were the UK, where we have a high amount of users and fast user growth. Likewise for Canada, likewise for Australia, so English-speaking markets. And then the latest one that we launched now is Germany recently, which is a more local language-orientated market also, which is interesting and exciting for us. And we can see that that message is also resonating very well there for our users and for our advertisers. So those are our key top picks now.
And I'm glad you mentioned Germany, because I was following and I thought it was really interesting that Reddit seems to have a pretty significant, not dominant, but growing market in Germany. And it's very interesting. What are some of the differences between international usage of Reddit and US users? How are those user bases different, if at all?
Yeah. So there's some, good news or bad news or some nuanced news in there, however you want to explain it. But I think the key message for us is that we've seen is that how people interact on Reddit and how they participate in these communities is pretty the same on a global level, right? Everyone has their passions. Everyone connects in their community around that passion and interest, right? And then they're all sharing ideas and discussing that with each other. So from that angle, that's been very useful for us. So even to your question, like in Germany, which is a more local language orientated market, we've seen that our users interact in fairly the same way. And they, of course, also, they all are into crypto these days, finance, gaming, technology, right? These are global themes that are interesting. In the US, that might have come through as a Wall Street bets. But then, in Australia, we have like an ASX kind of like local equivalent about stock going on there. And, even in Germany, they created kind of like their own Wall Street bets. It's Mauerstrassenbetten, which is the German for Wall Street bets in a way. And they're interacting in that way. And why I mean, the good news about that is what that really helps our clients with is you can launch with us locally in one market, but then as you want to expand your business as a more local regional player, the good news is you don't have to reinvent all your campaigns the whole time. You don't have to do everything different for every market because we're a global platform and our users have a kind of like a global approach to our platform. We're really good at helping our clients expand from one market into other markets and making that seamless and not that difficult for them. So I think that's a good thing about being a true global community.
Yeah, definitely. I actually want to ask you about that is for advertisers. I mean, are advertiser priorities from your perspective different in, say, Germany and the UK versus the traditional advertising base in the US?
I would say from the advertiser perspective, not that much, right? But that also comes a bit from the concept of what Reddit is. So, we have all these communities, as I said. So for every company, there are these communities that are relevant for them. So that makes it kind of like uniform, approachable for every local advertiser in Germany or in the UK to work with us because we have these communities that probably embody the audience that they want to go after. And then we have on our product offering side, we have a full suite. So you can do takeovers, which means you go for maximum reach, get your message out there, right? Or we can go into more detailed things with conversation placements or retargeting with our pixel, right? To really make those conversions happen. So I think based on all these communities that we have and our ad suite platform, if you want to call it that way, that can go from reach play to DR play to branding, we're kind of able to tap into all the differences that our local advertisers want in each of these markets.
Yeah, makes sense. I actually wanted to ask you, what's something that you've had to change, if anything, in order to adapt to the needs of consumers and advertisers abroad? Because obviously not every market is created equal. There are differences between each one. So has there been anything that you've had to change from a product standpoint or even just from an approach standpoint?
I think the key thing that we really want to focus on is as we continue to build out our international global presence is, as I said, the user interaction is pretty uniform, right? It's community belonging for everyone and having these communities that people participate in and share ideas in. But I think the local content, right? So we're always looking at more local content, building out more local content, right? I think that's something of an area that we'll continue to expand and focus on as a company and making sure that we are as relevant as always with all the communities that we have and that we truly are a home for every interest and every idea. And I think that's the key thing that we'll continue to focus on in the coming years as we go more and more international.
And you brought up something that I thought was interesting a second ago. I noticed that you rolled out conversation ads recently. Maybe you can take the listeners through that for a second, what it is exactly and what are some of the early results from that format.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not Reddit users from a listener perspective.
And shame on you.
I just want to say, first of all, please download the app and join the Reddit community. It's fun. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of goodness going on there. But so on Reddit, there are a lot of conversations happening, i.e. people are interacting with each other, sharing ideas, and basically see it as a discussion thread. And what conversation placements are, it's something that we launched in September recently. And these are ways for advertisers to connect with our users in those discussion threads that are going on. So in the heart of our community, in the heart of the conversations that are taking place. And that's kind of like a new ad format that we launched. We have post or promoted posts that you can do more at the top of the community. And then in these discussions, now we have conversation placements. And what we've seen since launching this is, first of all, you're even more contextual relevant in these conversations as an advertiser. It drives additional reach for an advertiser, which is exciting for them. And especially when you combine it with the posting ads and the conversation ads, we've seen a 9% higher click-through rate come through from this. And I think that is always very exciting. It means that the message that the advertisers are sharing there are relevant for the communities. because they're clicking on this and they want to learn more about this. And of course, that's great for our communities. Likewise, it's great for advertisers because that means that they're receiving traffic and that people want to know more about what they have to share. And often that means results into a purchase, as I spoke about, or something like that, which is often a good result for an advertiser. So it's been a very successful and exciting launch for us.
No, I think that's obviously very heartening because, of course, the one thing that you're always trying to hold on to is have a nice customer experience while at the same time selling, your ad inventory, right? It's a balancing act. Are there any other new ad formats that you're in the planning stages of?
There are many. We're always developing our ads product roadmap, but these are things that I will just say, like, if you're not a Reddit user, become a Reddit user. You will see these come through. They will help your experience on Reddit to connect your interest with brands who can help them fulfill. I'm not going to give any sneak peek on major launches that we're going to do now, but think about this, right? Reddit is a community conversation forum. Conversations happen in text. They happen in talk and listening. They happen in video, right? So those are the areas that we always look at.
I was going to say you mastered the art of the artful dodge, but fair enough. I had to ask. What have advertisers found are the best way to build their brands on the platform and to create a Reddit presence?
Yeah. So I spoke a bit about we have a fair bit of different offerings, from front page takeovers, seeing that as really being the first thing that people see when they come to Reddit, or when they or a category takeover when in gaming or technology, when you want to share your message with those kind of communities, to the conversation placements we spoke about. We have the retargeting. So we have full funnel solutions, if that's a bit of a boring word for listeners, but we have a lot going on for advertisers to connect to our user base, to our Redditors. I think the interesting ones are for example, a Volvo. Right? So Volvo really used our platform, I think, in a way that probably can only really happen on Reddit, right? They gathered stories, and this is an open forum, right? Reddit. They gathered stories of people who survived car accidents, right? Due to wearing a seatbelt or to other safety features. And Volvo is very much about a safety brand in cars. And, all these stories that people were sharing on Reddit with each other, right? They used that on their microsite. And it became a very interesting way of how people share user-based content, how they share about how safety is important for them and how safety, saved their lives. So that's just a great way of your community engagement for bigger brands. I can also speak, if you want, Jeremy, about Lagunitas for the beer audience among us. Lagunitas wanted to launch kind of a new beer. So we have a team, Karma Lab. It's kind of our in-house creative strategy agency. And they actually ask Redditors. That's one of the things that we do on Reddit. We actually interact as brands with our communities. And they ask, hey, if you could create a new IPA, what taste would you want? What would you put in there? So Redditors started giving them ideas about what flavors to add, what hops they could put in there. They even came up with names that this beer could be named. And the outcome of it, there's now a Redditor-inspired beer that Lagunitas has launched as an IPA. So I think that's also a great way of a brand really working with our communities, right?
So this has been great. I have to leave you in a second. I know you're a busy man, but I wanted to ask you just very quickly before we wrap, because it is brand anatomy, what's one brand you particularly admire and you draw inspiration from?
So if I have to pick one brand that really inspires me, I'm going to say, because when I got the question early, who I could have a coffee with, I think it was, I said Elon Musk. I'm going to say Tesla, just because they are changing the way of renewable energy, right? With creating battery storage, roof tiles for solar energy, and changing the way how we're looking at renewable energy, right, for mobility. And I think that's a very important way to go. And against all odds, bringing out electric cars first, only selling them online as a disruptor model, they've become the norm and still are the leading pack there ahead of others.
Well, this was great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jeremy. And thank you all for the listeners also.
That's all the time we have for today's episode, but let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you at podcast@eMarketer.com. I'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode of the Behind the Numbers Brand Anatomy. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Basis Technologies.